Today we'll start adding logic to our program. First of all, when the program starts, we should have a timer that shows the time passed since its launch. Let's implement the timer functionality in a separate method in the class display. We'll start the timer only from the same class, so we'll make the method private. And we'll call it startTimer. Inside this method, we'll have to continuously count the number of seconds passed since the program started, convert that value into minutes and seconds, and increase this value by 1 every second. We create a variable that will store the number of seconds, total seconds. Initially, it will be equal to 0, and then we add an infinite loop. In this infinite loop, we convert the total number of seconds into minutes and seconds. To get the number of minutes, we perform integer division by 60. Total seconds divided by 60. To get the remaining number of seconds, we'll use the modulo operator. Here we also write 60. After that, we set the value of minutes and seconds into the timer label. It has a property text, where we can set different values. We write timer label, text, assignment sign, and we'll output the word time, and then a colon, and then the minutes and seconds. After that, we put the thread to sleep for 1 second, and increment the number of seconds by 1. Total seconds and 2 pluses. And let's call this function in the method show. The window becomes visible, and the timer starts immediately. We run the program, and we see that the timer is successfully displayed, but it doesn't look very nice. Usually in timers, minutes and seconds are padded with zeros on the left. And the first thing we'll look at today is the method format from the class string. It allows formatting a string in a certain way. I'll show you how it's done. In the place where we set the text for the timer label, instead of creating a string manually, we call the method format from the class string. Here inside we can write absolutely any string, in quotes. And then if we want to append the value of a variable, we can leave a place for it. For this we write the %d. Here we'll put the number of minutes, and then we put a colon, and append the number of seconds. Again we leave a placeholder for another variable. We write $d, and then in the same order as we left placeholders for variables, we provide the actual values separated by a comma. First to insert minutes, we specify the variable minutes, and then we insert seconds. Now what will happen here? In the method format from the string class, we'll form a string. It will take what you wrote in quotes, and in place of the first variable $d, it will insert the minutes value. And then it will insert a colon, and in place of the second variable $d, it will insert the seconds value. And if you run the program now, you'll see that its behavior hasn't changed. And the time is displayed in the same way as before. So if you just want to attach variable values to a string, it's much simpler to use string templates. That is the previous way. But the method format from the class string is more flexible. And this method allows you to format strings in a more advanced way. For instance, we can specify that each number inserted into these placeholders must have at least 2 digits. And if it has fewer digits, it should be padded with zeros. And this is done as follows. We don't just write $d, but $0 We do this for minutes and also for seconds. And this notation means the following. We want to form such a string, where in place of d will be inserted minutes and seconds separated by a colon. But if the number of minutes has fewer than 2 digits, it will be padded with 1 0 on the left. And the same will happen with seconds. Let's run the program now to check how it works. And now the time is displayed in a much nicer format. The method format from the class string has many capabilities for string formatting. It's almost impossible to memorize them all. Usually, if you need to format a string, a timer, a date, or a floating point number in a specific way, you just Google a format specifier and insert it into the method string format. So don't worry, you don't have to memorize all the format specifiers. The timer works. Now we want this book to load when this button is clicked. Here remember the section about design patterns. In particular the pattern observer. How do we know if the button was clicked? Should we check in an infinite loop whether the button state has changed? whether it was clicked or not, and when the state changes to clicked, perform some actions. No, we are not going to do this, as the button already implements the pattern observer. So we can add observers or click listeners. As soon as the button is clicked, it will notify us, and we will be able to react accordingly. To subscribe to click events on the button, we can call the method addActionListener in it. Let's do that. We call the function apply. Here we will work with the object JButton, and on this button we add a listener. addActionListener. It takes a lambda expression as a parameter, and once the user clicks the button, the listener will be triggered and the code inside the curly braces will be executed. In the lesson on the pattern observer, I mentioned that the method for adding an observer has many different names, like addObserver, subscribe, or register observer, or in this case, addActionListener. And this name is very common in practice. Let's ensure our program works. When we click the button, let's simply output a message to the console, saying that the button was clicked. You're watching a video from our Kotlin programming course. I have left a link to the full version of the course as well as the biggest discount available in the video description and in the pinned comment. Enjoy watching. We run the program again, click the button, and in the console we see that the lines were successfully printed. But once the button is clicked, we don't just need to output a message to the console, we want to load the book. We'll simulate loading from the internet, that's why in the methods that will load the book, we'll set a delay of 3 seconds. Let's first create a class book, an instance of which we'll be loading. This class will be the same for all implementations of the program, so let's add a common package where we'll create this class, so that it can be accessed from other packages. Let's call it entities. In our program we work with books and authors, and these are main entities for our application, so the package is named accordingly. Here we add a class book. It will be a data class, and it will have 3 properties. First is the title of type string. Second, the year the book was released. Let it be of type int, and also genre. Genre is of type string, and when clicking the button we'll load not only the book, but also the author. That's why for the author, we'll also create a data class. We call it author. It will have 2 properties, name and short biography, a short description of this author. Now when clicking the button, we'll need to load the book, and then for this book load the author. We'll simulate internet loading, so to make the methods take longer to execute, we'll add some delay to them. We add the methods. Let them also be private. The method loadBook loads a book. Here we put the thread to sleep for 3 seconds, and then return some instance of a book. Let it be the book 1984. It was released in 1949, and its genre is dystopia. The second method will load the author of this book. A reminder, we are just simulating working with the internet. This kind of situation is very often used in practice. First we load one object, and then for this object we'll load some other data. For example, we loaded a movie, and then for this movie we'll load the rating. Here we need to focus on learning asynchronous programming. That's why we don't actually work with the internet, but merely simulate it by adding a delay of several seconds. Let this method take a book for which we are loading the author, and return an instance of the class author. Here we also put the thread to sleep for 3 seconds, and return some author. The author of this book is George Orwell, and we will write a short biography. He is a British writer and journalist. Now when clicking the load button, we need to do several things besides loading the book. I'll demonstrate you how the program works. At the start of the program, the time is shown, and then we click on the button and it becomes inactive. And in the window a message appears saying that we are loading information about the book. When the information is loaded, it's displayed on the screen, and then a line appears saying loading author information. Once the author has been loaded, information about this author is displayed, and the button becomes active again. Let's implement all this. This will be done on the button click. So we'll be working inside this lambda expression. First, we make the button inactive. We set is enabled to false. Then in this text area, we need to set the text, saying that we are loading book information. We access info area, the property text. Set the message that book information is loading and add a line break. By the way, here is an interesting point. If after this course you move on to learning Android development, then your experience with Swing will be very useful. Because when working with the interface in the Android system, a very similar approach is used. You'll also need to work with components, set listeners on them, and change their properties. So we output the text about loading book information. After that, we start the loading itself. We get an instance of the class book by calling the function loadBook. After it's been loaded, we need to output all the information about this book into the text area. For this, we call the method append. We don't simply change the property text, since the old text needs to be preserved. This line must remain, and the next one should be added. Here we output the book title. And then we add a line break, output the year, add another line break, and output the book genre. We add a line break, and then we need to output the line that we are loading information about the author. Then we get an instance of the class author by calling the method loadAuthor. This method takes the book for which we are loading the author. You may ask why we need to pass this object if it's not used inside. And I remind you again that we are just simulating a situation where some data is loaded, and then for the data, some additional data is loaded. So for this method to work, it needs data from the previous method. Don't pay attention to the fact that the parameter is not used. So we loaded the author, and then we need to display information about this author. Again, we access the object info area, call append, and add the information about them. First their name, then their biography. We add a line break, and when all the information about the book and the author has been displayed in the console, we can make the button active again. We set is enabled to true. Start the program. The time is successfully displayed. We click the button. See, the timer stops. The button hasn't become inactive. It just doesn't react. And after all the data has been loaded, the timer starts running again. Why does this application work poorly and freeze? Not at all like it did in the example. The thing is that updating the information on the screen, changing the button state, displaying text and so on, is done on the main thread. And what do we do here? We put the thread to sleep for 3 seconds. And we do the same inside the timer. We put the thread to sleep for 3 seconds and then perform some actions. While the thread is sleeping, no rendering can happen. And the program freezes for a while until the thread wakes up. We'll find out how to solve these problems in the next lesson. For now, there hasn't been much new information for you. We looked at the capabilities of the method string format for formatting time, and also made a practical use of the pattern observer. We subscribe to the button click events. This way we got the ability to call some code once the user clicks the button. Achieve this behavior, and we'll continue in the next lesson. See you.